This is AfroEconomics with J.B. Bryan. AfroEconomics is a strategic financial management program designed for the advancement of Black wealth in America and abroad.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for joining us, folks. Hope you had a great weekend. Financial advisor J.B. Bryan has some economic tips for us, with tax day being next Monday. J.B., welcome back to WOL Radio.
It's good to be here again. How are you, Carl? It's a good day.
J.B., welcome back to WOL Radio.
Thank you for the opportunity. And the U.S. economy is healthy, and it's tax time.
Well, help us out here. You know,
Yes.
I know you're not a tax advisor, but you are an economic planner, so you can help us out here.
Yes.
They've shown all kinds of reports that people are not getting as much money as they expect to get back, and many people, including myself, haven't even filed their taxes yet. And so help us out. What can you do?
Yes.
The gun is at our heads. We've got exactly
That's
1
right.
week to decide whether to file our taxes or not. What happens if we don't file?
Well, if you don't file, you're in trouble because you are going to have to pay penalties. Say you even file an extension, but you owe money to the IRS and you don't know it. Well, you better know it. And that's the interesting thing about so many tax preparers. Now, I'm a financial advisor that owns a registered investment advisory firm. Now, everyone that works with your money better feel good about taxes, because when you're talking to people about their investments like I do, that's how I started learning so much about taxes. So I say that if I have a client that owes money and their tax preparer says, well, we're going to file an extension because you forgot to come see me until that last week, or you were listening to Carl Nelson, and then you said, oh, I'm going to do my taxes, I forgot. And then they say, no, I don't have time for that. The interesting thing is, if you owe money, you're going to get penalized. Matter of fact, if you owe money, even if you pay it on time, but you should have been paying that money throughout the year, you'll get a penalty for not paying your taxes during the year when you should have been paying them. So you have to make sure that you're making an effort to pay your taxes throughout the year. Now, if you're generating a loss throughout the year, then of course there's no taxes due. But if you are making income, you need to be paying on that income every quarter. If you're getting a 1099 every month, and a lot of people are contract workers, you better believe it, you're supposed to be paying estimated taxes. So don't just think tax time is the time. And so many self-employed people do that. Like, think about how many people you have out there that are IT people that are contractors, or real estate agents that are getting 1099s, and they wait until the end of the year or the next year at this time in order to get their taxes organized. Well, that's too late. That's why we've been talking about it all through 2018.
So your advice is that for them to file quarterly then, right?
Oh, yes, you need to know what your income is every month. If you know what your income is every month, then you definitely know if you need to be turning in income each quarter. And even people on Social Security. And I was talking to a client this morning, and she had a tax liability. And I was reviewing her return and giving her some feedback. And I said, well, your biggest challenge is that your Social Security, up to 85% of your Social Security can be taxed. And she didn't withhold any taxes on her Social Security income. So when you add together her IRA withdrawal for income, her pension income for withdrawal, then all of that income made her Social Security even more taxable. So she's thinking, oh, your Social Security is only this small amount. Well, when it's added all together, you could be making over $100,000. And that's really, probably your average listener out there who's getting pension and IRA income and Social Security is very close, if not over $100,000, especially if there's two people doing it. So is
there any level that you don't have to pay taxes if you're earning a wage, whether it be from Social Security or a pension or a part-time job, where it's just so small that the government says, we don't want to hear from you?
Oh, definitely. Because you would say, well, what is the standard deduction. So if you're making less than the standard deduction for tax for income, say standard deduction for 2018 was for an individual $12,000. So if you made less than that $12,000, then theoretically you will not have to pay tax. You don't have to do a return. But some people who made $10,000, they actually withheld taxes at their job. So if they want to get that $2,000 or $3,000 that you paid to the government, you have to do a return in order to get that taxes back. But if you didn't, so if you know you're going to make less than the standard deduction, say your head of household, you're going to make $17,000, the standard deduction for head of household for last year was $18,000, then they really didn't have to withhold taxes throughout the year. But generally, you don't know that. So you're going ahead and you're paying it. Your job is withholding the taxes. And then you end up at the end of the year, you have actually withheld $2,000. So when you do your return, you'll get that and possibly even more back. So you have to file a return to get that back. But we do need to know, and I'm seeing that a lot this year, that so many people don't have to itemize because the standard deduction has increased so much that doing the Schedule A for itemization has become insignificant for them. So that is a positive about this new tax change, that for people who were not benefiting, and the majority of Americans do not benefit from itemizing on their taxes. So with this increase in the standard deduction, it has helped the majority of Americans be able to actually benefit from a higher standard deduction.
Now, does that vary from state to state, or is that a federal limit?
That's federal. That's the federal. Yes. So even though there's a lot of talk, this is interesting from an AfroEconomics perspective. There's a lot of talk about these things, this new tax law hurting so many people. But you got to listen to the entire story of who it's hurting. You're talking about people who are paying a lot of mortgage interest, who aren't getting the benefit of writing off all of that interest, which I feel is the largest government subsidy ever created. You know, there's more, billions, trillions, I guess billions of dollars benefiting people from being able to write off their mortgage interest, where you got people who have car interest, credit card interest, they don't get to write that off. So they're mad because there's limits now on your mortgage interest that you can deduct. But nobody's talking about that they have been benefiting from that so long. So there's people who now actually get the benefit, and that's a majority of the Black community is benefiting from this higher standard deduction because they did not have that huge amount of mortgage interest to write off because we didn't have these huge mortgages.
Yeah, but many of us still don't own our own homes or have a mortgage.
That's right. So with this new high standard deduction, you get the benefit that people used to have to get a house. They would think so. They would go, well, I'm getting the house because I want the tax benefit, which in my opinion is one of the worst reasons to buy a home. It does not have a tax benefit that is anywhere close to the benefit of reducing your taxable income by participating in your retirement plan at work. That is a much better benefit, plus your employer will match your money. So, but people have bought into that. I repeatedly got toss and turn.
Hang on a second,
Yes.
JB. We got to take a short break here.
Yes.
I'll let you finish that because this is some interesting information.
Yes.
Folks, you got to file your taxes. If you haven't filed your taxes, reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. I thank you folks for staying with us. Our guest is JB. He's a financial advisor. As most of you know, well, you should know, April 15th is next week, Monday. And if you haven't filed your taxes yet, you get some good advice before you go into your tax preparer from JB. So, JB, you would tell us about the write-offs for the mortgages for the tax year. He says you can write off your mortgages. I'll let you finish on that. And tell us, too, if you can write off the taxes, the real estate taxes, and also the interest.
Oh, yes. Well, see, we were discussing the mortgage interest, and I was saying that for our community, because now there's over 40% of the Black community actually are homeowners. But even with that being said, 70% of Americans, and so that would mean an even higher percent, let's just say around 80% of Black people don't itemize. You have to itemize your taxes in order to write off those property taxes and the mortgage interest that you're talking about. So what I'm saying is that when you are purchasing a home, because your incentive for purchasing the home is for the tax write-off, that is an inappropriate approach. You should be looking for a home purchase for a good reason, say for affordable housing, because you have a big family and you know that it would be impossible to get an apartment that would be affordable at that price, or you're going to be in that place for a long time and you're looking for the investment of that property. You believe in the future of the community, whatever, you just want it. But as far as if you're looking for tax benefits, there's a lot of better tax benefits. And if we keep it simple, it is simply better to make sure you're maximizing your work and retirement plan, and the benefit of reducing your taxable income can help you even more. So that's what I'm saying, is that we've repeatedly told or fooled ourselves, but the majority of us, even as homeowners, have still been doing the Schedule A, but still taking the standard deduction because it's higher than your interest and your other deductions for the majority of us. And with the new tax law, the standard deduction has even increased even more. And that's what I was saying that. So that means that if it was 80% for us before, you're looking at 90% or more for us now, who will benefit by having a simpler process of doing your return. So be very careful when you go to your tax preparer and they say, oh, you have a home, so we're going to have to do a Schedule A. That is not true. Just because you have a home does not mean you need to pay extra for that Schedule A. Because if your home interest does not exceed the standard deduction or your other and all of your deductions, so you need to get familiar with what that Schedule A is. And that's why you all, Paul, that I've heard you all pick on me about not encouraging people to do taxes on their own. I'll just say like that, and I really feel that it's important for us to at least understand that tax return. So if you're still in a position, look at last year's tax return. What was your interest? What were your charitable deductions? What did your Schedule A look like? And then see if you need to pay for that Schedule A again, because we repeatedly pay for Schedule A's and we're still taking the standard deduction. So because we just answered that question. Do you own, or are you purchasing a home? You say yes, goes into Schedule A and it does these things, but you could skip it if you understood the Schedule A and that you don't have enough itemized deductions to benefit from itemizing. And I hope that everybody that's listening understands that, because there are some people, Carl, that are running off the road because they feel that it's un-Black American to say to people that they should not see buying a home as a tax benefit. But I, from being in the business so long, have seen, I feel that who has benefited from home ownership of Black people the most has been the government entities that guarantee the loans. Because they get us in with a very little minimum down payment, and then we unfortunately that increases the chances of going into foreclosure. We end up losing money in many cases because we're not ready for that purchase and for that amount of debt. So there's no real benefit of going into a home with only $1,000 down or $5,000 down, because you're really putting yourself at risk, and then you have to pay that additional insurance to them so that they are protecting themselves from the risk that they're taking with you not having that 20% down payment. So I said to a member,
but let me know if I can ask you this though, JB. Why are so many people I guess, getting sticker shock when they go to file their taxes. And those who haven't will probably experience it this week. They thought they would get a refund, and sometimes they're now being forced to pay. Mm-hmm. What are the changes in the tax code that's causing all this?
Well, what happened was they reduced the amount of taxes that were being held for you during the year because the tax brackets changed. So unless you adjusted your W-4 to represent all of your household income, you did not withhold enough during the year. And that's where it's coming from. So if you owe $2,000, that means that you should have been putting away into you should have been paying an additional, now your whole household should have been doing an additional approximate $200 more to the federal government each month during the year. But you have to look at the return to understand that. But it doesn't have anything to do with the tax code unless you specifically had extreme amount of business expenses for using your house for work where your unreimbursed employer expenses or some sort of things that were cut out. And, there's very few things that really benefit us a lot that were changed. Now, I can only speak to the majority of us. So for the majority of us that are paying more, it's because we did not pay enough during the year. And it's hard for us to admit that. So when our checks got bigger, we celebrated instead of saying, whoa, I better make sure I'm saving part of this. Because with everything that we do, we have to be conscious of what's happening. As I was saying with a lady this morning, she said, I'm about to sell a rental property. I said, well, if you sell that rental property, you need to make sure you talk to me about how much you need to set aside for paying taxes because you're going to have capital gains on that. She owned it outright. And now you're going to sell it? Well, that's a taxable event. But what do? We wait, and then you say, oh, my goodness, I owe $20,000. That's Trump. That's Trump. Well, no, that is because this is the year that you decided to sell the rental property, and it happened to also be the year that things changed with the tax code. But when it came to capital gains, you're still in a good position. So,
well, that's interesting. What advice do you give a person like that? She wants to sell. She's going to get hit by capital gains. What does she do? You
got to set it aside, and you can do even better than that. What were we just talking about? Send in that estimated amount. So if you think, you can tell. So we have capital gains, tax brackets, your income, and it will say, well, based on your income, your capital gains is going to be approximately 15%. On this particular transaction. Now, a capital gain, because that is an investment property. So it's looked at just like selling a stock with a gain. Where your residential property, we'd be having a totally different conversation. But on a real estate property that you've been showing on your tax return, that is an investment. You're selling it. It's a capital gain if you make money on it. So then you should need to and if you have a tax preparer, you have a financial advisor, get them to help you at least know the approximate amount that you need to go ahead and send in those estimated taxes.
Well, let me interrupt you and ask this. And if it's not shown on your tax return that you even own this property, can you still skate?
You think I'm going to say that out loud?
Am I asking you to break the law? I'm just asking.
That's right. That's right. And that's a tricky situation, I would say, but even if you have not been reporting the income on that, you still would have the responsibility of reporting that gain. And how they would know about it is because they would have, if you could prove that it was a residential, that you have been living in it with the last 2 years and things like, so you have certain criteria for it to be a residence or second residence. But because to make it an investment, you actually would have been having to, but you could actually, and you could, if you had a property that you never rented out, you could do it as a business. And I had a client that did that. They bought it. They never rented it out. They flipped it all within the same year. But that's still a taxable event. But it could go on your Schedule C. as a business that you're a real estate investor, not a person that rents, because your rental income is a different schedule. So that's a good point. But you would have to recognize it.
We're coming up on a break real soon. But what are some of the changes in the tax schedule from last year to this year?
So, well, the standard deduction, the business. So you know how there's the home office expense where you would go have your job, but they would allow you to work. They would allow you to work from home, and then you would write off non-tax deductible employer expenses where you can't do that anymore. So if you're working out of your home.
Hang on a second, JB. We got to take a short break here. I'll let you break down some of those changes in the tax law this year. That's why some people are, when they go and do their taxes, they come away very, very shocked. Folks, you got a question about money, you need to speak to JB Bryant. Her number is 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. Okay, thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is JB Bryant. And JB, I just want to let you know that some people are already calling me. They should be calling you, asking these questions. But they wanted to know about whether deductions, because you mentioned deductions, so they want to know if they can deduct for their uniforms. If they're working for the government, they have to have uniforms, and they know they could deduct that last year. Can they deduct that this year? And I'll let you finish what you were saying before we stopped, and then you can answer that one.
Well, that's exactly what I was referring to. Non-reimbursed business expenses. You used to be able to, but now you cannot write that off anymore. So you need to speak with your employer about how I'm hoping that they will begin to cover it, because your employer can write those things off. Everything to me always makes sense when the government changes it, because non-reimbursed expenses from that you incur because of your employer, to me, never should have been a tax deduction. If they ask you to come into your home and you are adjusting your home for their business, they can write off the expense for you to do that. So if you need to clean, that's why most people that have a uniform requirement, they give the uniform to the employer, and the employer cleans the uniform. That doesn't make sense for you to have to, if that is a requirement and they want it cleaned a particular way or pressed a particular way. But if it's just a generic way that they want you to look, and it's just like washing clothes, it actually is saving you money, because at least you don't have to buy clothes to go to work. Look at it that way. And if they say it's optional, you can wear the uniform or not wear the uniform, well, then of course they're not going to cover that expense, because they're only doing it to help you. But no, those non-reimbursed business expenses are not going to be able to be itemized anymore. And most of the changes were in the limits. So on limits on the property taxes, limits on the interest that can be written off, limits on the second mortgage. And some people were grandfathered in, but you're not going to be able to write off all that interest on second mortgages. And so definitely look at all the details on second mortgages before you take one out.
All right.
So that's a good question, Carl.
800-450-7876 to speak to our guest. I guess it's JB Bryant. She's a financial advisor. And JB, some more tips for folks who are just finding this out. What can they do? Because I guess it's shot for this year already. What can they do for next year?
I think the biggest thing that you should do is make sure you take taxation seriously. Like, it's not a April 15th thing. It's a all year long concept that you have to, everything that I do, everything that I buy, everything that I sell, what are the tax consequences with this particular action? And I think that is true financial empowerment for our community. If I get this raise, what will it do to my tax situation? How can I reduce my taxable income? Just this morning, I was speaking with a doctor that's a member of AfroEconomics, and I was reviewing her return, and it's going to be all week. And I noticed that she gets some income in a 1099 and not actively in a work retirement plan. And I said, you can reduce that money on that business income on that Schedule C by doing a $6,000 contribution to an IRA because you're over, the 50 years old. So you have to really look at and I said, you're really telling me that you have she had just become comfortable with the fact that I have to pay all of these taxes back. And I said, this year, we're going to look at this. You're not going to allow the tax preparer to just hit the submit button. Now, that would have been wonderful if the tax preparer had said to her, you should set up an individual retirement account because that will reduce this business income over here because you got W-2 income, you got partnership income, and then you have this business income. Also, you have all these incomes, and when they come together, you're owing all this money. So because we're attacking it, so now it will become a habit that if I'm not actively participating in a work plan, I need to put that into my IRA. And so you need to have someone like me in your back pocket who can set up an IRA just like that. It's no big deal. Too many of us are turning around like, I need an IRA. Who do I talk to? They don't. We need to have financial advisors on speed dial in our community and people that are licensed broadly to look out for your best interest. I was listening to a commercial the other day and it said people at our firm are licensed and required to look out for your best interest. And I said, well, they're a registered investment advisory firm just like I am, but that was very smart marketing. That's the way I should intro. Hello, you're calling a firm that's licensed and required to look out for your best interest. Make sure that you do business with that type of people so that whatever advice they're giving you.
Let me interrupt you and
right.
ask you this then. For some of the folks who fell short this year, what do they do? What do they say when they go to their employer and tell them they want to change this tax schedule? Because they don't know, what is it a percentage? What is it they want to do? What is it they say?
Good question. There's a worksheet. I'm so glad you said that. On the W-4, it comes with a worksheet. So if someone just gives you a W-4 and your employer gives you that and they just say, sign that, fill that out, and they don't give you the worksheet part of it, go online and get the worksheet yourself. If you need it, email me, jb@afroeconomics.com. I'll send you the PDF. I've seen it online, the W-4 PDF. It has a calculator and it says income from spouse, income from other sources, income from second job. I mean, it's a nice little worksheet and it will help you calculate not exactly. There's no exact, but you will be a lot closer than not doing the worksheet. So do it.
Wow.
Definitely.
I know the days when it was so simple, huh?
I know, right? That's true.
A tweet that says some items are not deductible from IRS, are deductible by the state. If you can verify for that, and they say if you're aware of that.
Oh, someone asked? Look, come on. Look, they're afraid to call, right? Every state definitely has different programs and different criteria, and that is a good thing to look at. Like, you may not be able to. I think in the north, like in Massachusetts and places like that, where they have very high property taxes. I think there's been some changes on the state level because we have federal limitations, and on the state level, they have made changes in the limitations. And so you might see a lot of that where the states, because they're benefiting from those property taxes the most, that they will help you benefit from this high taxation that they're charging you. So, the property taxes on things. So, yes, you are right. There's a lot of that's why you have to do a separate return, your state return, and typically it's due at a later time. And I think I'm guilty of that, where you do the federal and then you let the system kind of calculate your state and then you just push it in and keep on moving. I'm praying that the computer will figure it out. But you're right. We do need in our specific states to study their laws and see if there are specific things that could benefit you in your situation. Good question.
Oh, well, JB, I got a question. Another tweeter want to know, says he lives from check to check. How can he save? What's the best way to save?
The best way to save is to avoid going into debt. If you avoid debt and don't listen to anyone who tells you that you deserve something. Look, because we deserve way more than we can afford. But get away from those bad ideas. Get away from people who don't have the same habits or are not headed in the direction that you want to go. So that'll make it a lot easier. And make sure that your family unit is on one accord on the importance of getting out of debt and saving. Because sometimes we want to save, but we still want to accumulate debt. So they'll save by accumulating debt. And they say, well, I'll save this money. So they'll save in their work plan, but they'll live off a credit card and carry a credit card balance. That's defeating the purpose. Because if you want a guaranteed return on your money, pay down those high interest rate credit cards. So start with not accumulating one more dime of debt. And definitely, and I don't really agree that there's good debt and there's bad debt, but there is debt that at least you're purchasing something that gives you income potential. Like if you go into debt in order to buy inventory for your business, that's different than just buying clothes for your closet. But if you're buying clothes because you're going to sell them, then that could definitely be seen as good debt. Financing, leveraging money so that you're not taking your cash flow in order to buy an asset that will generate income for you. I mean, I could argue, Carl, that buying a rental property that will create income for you and renting an apartment to live in could be a better move than buying a great big house and you living in it by yourself and not having any other additional source of income.
Well, having said that, is it best to put money in a savings account or a 401k, IRA? What's the best way?
And if you were trying to figure out how to save after you have fully funded your emergency fund, definitely graduate into.
All right, stop at the emergency fund
right.
now. Let's not skate over that. This is important.
That's right.
How much money should one have in their emergency fund?
There's this rule of thumb to have at least 3 to 6 months.
I tell you what, hang on a second. They tell me we got to take a quick break here.
Sure.
This is very important. I hope folks are listening about the emergency fund. 800-450-7876, number to call to speak to JB. JB, before we left, we were talking about the money that we set aside for an emergency because, folks, you've been on listening to us for quite a while. Mark from Anaheim says we should have a bug-out bag in case something catastrophic happens where we are, whether it be an earthquake or a hurricane or Trump does something funny and, and everything's shut down. You got to have a bug-out bag. That's what he calls it. Now, JB says you got some money set aside. So, JB, how much is that, and where should that money be?
Do you remember when, and a lot of everybody at home or in their car right now, you're probably too young to remember when the new millennium, I know me and Carl remember, and everybody thought that the banks were going to close down when it went from 1999 to 2000.
Yeah, why 2000?
Yeah, well, definitely, I do still believe that we do need to keep more cash at home than we do. I think we just are becoming way more reliant on things like now you pay with things with your telephone. So we're moving farther and farther away from our money. And that is a challenge because if we did have a hard time, if something did happen and artificial intelligence wasn't working for us and shut us out, we need to have some cash available. The bottom line is cash is king. So,
how much though?
But as far as I would say at least a month of your expenses you should have in cash somewhere safe. And I know it's hard for you to think of, but have something that is locked in a box, but have at least a month of cash available to you. And I truly believe in that. I think that is going to benefit, if not all of us, some of us, by making sure that we have that available. And then, and like the person who's coming on next, I'm sure that they would agree that artificial intelligence is the future, even in financial management. There's so many, they call them robo-advisors, where people are doing more and more with artificial intelligence to make their, especially financial investment decisions and managing their portfolios and things like that. And because of that, we are becoming more reliant on machines and less connected to our assets, and we need to reconnect. And as a people, we are more comfortable with things that we can touch. But I do feel that the future is we have to become more comfortable with assets that are virtual, that we can't touch, like your stocks, like your stock portfolio. In my career, I have met people with hundreds of stock certificates from different companies in their house because they've been investing so long, and they were investing when they wouldn't allow a Black person to have an investment account in my career. So that is, frightening to think about how we've been shut out. But now we have to make sure that we get included. So that's two different things indeed, that we do need to have our emergency funds. But when you brought up, I want to share this. I would feel bad if I didn't share this, that I was reading and you're on your page, and you had a post about hustle. It had like 10 tips from Nipsey Hussle. And he was talking about economic tips, and not one of his tips were about getting involved in the stock market. And I said, wow, here we are with a millennial who has some huge ideas about starting your own businesses, buying the block, everything. But when we look at how much better historically the stock market has done than real estate, it's frightening that we are still going into another generation that is not taking advantage of the growth opportunities that our economy has and the advantages of the stock market when you look at it from the perspective of generational wealth and the ease of passing on stock investments from one generation to another. I have to say.
Well, let me interrupt you and ask you this, JB, because how much training do you need to have? You're saying to invest in stocks. I know this is probably just on the street level.
That's right.
So, but maybe that's why he didn't.
That's right, because
how much knowledge do you have?
That's right. But imagine if he was listening to your show and had exposure to AfroEconomics, owned by a Black-owned registered investment advisory firm, and know that they have an advisor that focuses on us that close to them, just a smidgen away, just to get that knowledge. But it's true. I think it is intentional that there's not opportunities for people like you and me to get on the massive level to really help us the way that what you're doing really does, because you are changing lives. I get calls for weeks after being on your show with people with just basic questions about their investments. And one guy came to see me just last week, and he was about to make a seriously bad decision with his money that they were going to have him tied up for 5 years. And if it weren't for you introducing me to him, and I stopped him and I said, that doesn't make any sense, brother. You are fine where you are. And he said, oh my God, thank you so much. And I hope that he's listening right now, because it is true. We have to help one another. But you're right. We have to get into a position that we feel more comfortable, that we ask more questions, that we investigate what their licenses are. Because a lot of times the people are only going to tell you about things that are according to what they're able to do. So if a person doesn't have a license to tell you about stocks, they're not going to tell you about stocks. So if the majority of our financial advisors that serve our community are not licensed in that way, then that's what continues to shut us out. They're going to continue to just tell us about funds and tell us about high fee investments and tell us about expensive often insurance products that may not be appropriate for you at that point in your life. But if Nipsey Hussle had been told about buying, the first time he got $1 million and he met me and I said, hey, let's get some of that Amazon and some of that Facebook. It's like, let's get some of this.
But, let me jump in here too.
Not to give any advice. I'm not telling anybody to go do those, though. Look, Carl, let me tell them. I'm not telling you to buy.
It's the trust issue. Because, a lot of our people, they have a problem trusting us.
Yes, they do. They really do. We can't even get past the fact of even learning to speak to one another. And I'm from North Carolina, so I just don't get it when we walk past one another and don't speak. Why do you need to know where I work, what I do for a living, and approximately how much I make in order for you to say hello to me? We're from the same tribe. I mean, that's in my opinion. We should at least give each other courtesy. I don't even. I'm gonna speak to you no matter what color you are, but especially we're flexing the same color. We're going through the same challenges. You know, we're going through the same things. That doesn't make any sense. That we're not. So of course we're not. And then people will tell me, my friend told me they ain't gonna never talk to no black person about their money. But yet they'll talk about the fact that Donald Trump said he's not. You know, I don't know that. I don't know that. That's just a rumor. But what I do know is that you have lost your mind if you're saying that you don't want anybody that looks just like you to help you. And that is sad.
That's self-hate.
Yes, it is. Yes,
it is. You don't value your skills or whatever you're doing as well, whether you be a banker, a baker, or whatever. You don't think your skills is that good.
Yes.
But
yes.
Anyway, we got some folks who want to talk to you. Hang on a second, JB.
Okay.
800-450-7870. Let me just say this. You don't have to use your real name. If you want folks to know your business, that's cool. You can use a different name, different city, doesn't matter. But take advantage of JB's skills right now. 800-450-7876. Keith is reaching out to you. He's calling from Maryland. Keith, you're on with JB.
Hey, how you doing, JB?
How you doing, my brother?
All right. I'm listening to you, and I tell you, you read up my line.
Good.
This year, me and my wife, we was in for a big surprise with our taxes, and together we make like $200, and we had to pay this year really like $15,000 back, and if it wasn't for the little bank company that I have with my tax preparer to put that in it as a loss, and he got it down to $8,000, and that was about the best that he could do.
That's right.
And
That's
and like
good.
I said, I'm doing 2 full-time jobs. My wife, she's full-time. But right now, it's just like, we need some help with some finances.
Right.
Guidance somehow or another, trying to, if we're going to make the money, where can we put the money at? Or
That's right.
Where can, how can we keep some of this money?
That's right. And Keith, he probably didn't even, or the tax person, or he or she did not talk to you about that retirement account that you could have. And you could even in your business, you could have set up, your wife helps you with the business, a retirement account for you and her. And even reduce that tax bill even more. Now, yes, you'd have to fund it, but at least you're keeping that money with you than sending that money off to the IRS. So you are correct. And also, that's what Carl and I were just talking about. All those sources of income that you have, when they come together, you're not withholding enough. So you go to one job and you make $60,000, and then they withhold the tax bracket for $60,000. Then you go to another job and you make $40,000, and then they even lower your tax bracket on that. And then your wife, she goes and she makes $60,000, and then she makes $40,000, and then you put it all together. $200,000 is a whole different tax bracket for all of it. You see what I'm saying? So you've got all these different levels of income. So you go up, you get to 100, boom, that gets taxed at a rate. You get to 150, 160, that gets taxed at a rate. You go up to 200. So you're just, stepping up that ladder. And the only way to calculate it and estimate it correctly is you have to do that worksheet or look at what you paid this year, add it all together of what you should have withheld, and adjust what you're withholding and divide it across all the jobs. And it's great. And with your business, make sure you're maximizing all of the benefits of having the business. In any expenses that if you're doing advertising, if you're sponsoring stuff for organizations locally and putting ads in there about your business. Like a lot of times we don't take our business seriously. So the income is coming in, but you're not thinking about all of the expenses you incurred in order to create that income. The business cards, the paper, the Wi-Fi, the cell phone for the business, all of these things.
Right.
And the saddest part is that some tax preparers will not even help you because they may audit you. It doesn't matter. I have a business. This is legitimate. If you're afraid of being audited, then they need to stop being a tax preparer, because that's what the IRS is supposed to do. Make sure people are telling the truth. But you're telling the truth.
But, hang on a second, JB,
That's
and stay
right.
with us, Keith. We've got to take a short break here. We're closing on the top of the hour. All right, JB, can you go ahead and tell him, finish giving some advice here? Because, like I said, that 15,
Definitely.
grand.
Keith, you still with me? Great. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes, I'm still with you.
But I think that definitely the solution is going to be to make sure that you don't have to come up with it all at once, and then make sure that you're maximizing all of the expenses. And, I'd be happy to give you a complimentary consultation to help you and your wife. I have an office right there on 12th Street in D.C., Northwest. I don't if you're in D.C., I have an office in New York also, but and in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, you say 12th Street. You say 12th Street
Yes.
in Northeast.
Yes, 712th Street, right in Metro Center, up on the 7th floor. But just call me, 1-844-JB Bryan, complimentary consultation. I mean it. And there's no strings attached. But to just help you.
You say 1-844 what now?
JBBRYAN, which is 1-844-522-7926. And I think it really, Keith, will make a difference if you all sat down, talked about the benefits that you have at the jobs, making sure first you're maximizing those benefits at the job. AfroEconomics, a membership, a key part of it is making sure that you have a good allocation in those jobs, because if you are maximizing those work plans, you could have put away that $15,000 at those different jobs pre-taxed, and also get those matches from those jobs, because you sound like y'all got some good jobs. So we just got to get you in those plans. Then you get in the plan, you go, where do I put it? You go, JB, where do I put it? And I help you put it in the right areas too. Those, look, my challenge is to make sure that you're investing appropriately for your risk tolerance. And based on historical performance, we'll try to make some good decisions. So, but definitely, you give me the info. The more info you give me, the more we can help, the more we can build together. And it starts with taking advantage of a complimentary consultation.
Well, that's one thing. That's one thing about me. I have no problem with helping my folks.
That's
I'm
right.
from North Carolina myself, so I have no problem of Durham, North Carolina. So I have no problem helping my black people.
Okay. Well, I'm from a town called Ahoskie, North Carolina. You wouldn't know about that.
No, I don't think I know that one, but
Ahoskie is a little Indian town. Yeah, if you saw my mama,
okay,
if you saw my mama, you would know. Look, yeah. My dad though. My dad was from Vanceboro, even smaller, really. And so North Carolina is all, but definitely Durham is the city to us. That's like DC.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, brother. Hey, I appreciate it, Carl. I appreciate the show, man. I listen to you every day, and this information is really helpful. And I will be giving you a call, JB, because I'm right here in D.C.
Good.
I'm about, Maryland and D.C. right here together. So
good. That's right.
Here, so
all right.
I'll give you a call and set something up with you.
That's right. That's right. And I meet people in Bowie all the time. I have an office there to use, so we're good. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you're all over there. Okay.
Yeah.
Good
Yes, indeed. We got to do it.
Steve.
Thank you.
Really, we got to do. The IRS has issued $6 billion less in refunds compared to the same time last year. So folks are getting less refunds this year. There is something you can do about it. You can call JB for one.
Mm-hmm.
JB, a tweet question for you. Some people say, a tweeter says, some people believe that having a credit card debt is good for your credit report. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Having a credit card can help you build your credit, but having credit card debt is having a balance that is not going to help your credit report. You're actually help your credit report more by having an available balance. So you could just actively using it and putting $1,000 on it and paying it off, putting $500 on it and paying it off. That's what helps your credit report. And I think that a lot of us do get confused about that we think that you have to carry a balance in order. No, just use it, pay it off. That helps. See, credit cards carry a lot of weight in your credit score industry, because they are a bill that you don't have to pay a lot back for. So when you pay it off, you're showing them how disciplined you are. And then the other ones are like your fixed
Well,
payment
hold on a
amounts.
sec. So you're saying if you use your credit card, you pay it off like, sort of like American Express, you pay the whole thing off every month?
That's right. That's right. That's the way you want to use your credit card. No. And if you have to carry a balance, you definitely want it to be below 20%. Below 20%, you're going to keep on building up your score. You start getting that balance over 30% of the available line. So if you have $1,000 card and you have $300 on it, it's hurting your credit. You got to get that down. You can't, they're just to be used for convenience, not for financing things. I've always said that it would be interesting if they started just going into people's houses and pulling out stuff. If they didn't want to pay their credit card back and they said, give me those shoes, give me that coat, give me that, give me that stuff. If they repoed consumer items, people would not do that.
Yeah. I got a tweet question for you. They want to know if you set up foundations.
No. Setting up foundations are easier than ever. And you definitely need to go into the IRS.gov, look up developing foundations, and they have a new simple form for setting up foundations, small foundations, and nonprofits. And that's why so many more nonprofits have been created, because they've made the process a lot easier. And then you have different types of foundations, like private foundations and public foundations, so definitely investigate that. But my family would love if I could set them up, because we've been trying to. They've been, because I back off. I try to avoid getting into the family financial stuff because I'll take over, and they don't like when I do that. So, but they have been working with that for a while on setting up a family foundation. So I told them, go in there, get that. And then they said, no, we got to hire somebody to do that. So, but I think that the best thing to do is to go in there and learn and do it yourself. And it is very easy. We can create our own when you have time. See, when you're starting something, you have more time at that point. And you get to keep your money. And the most important part about it is the things that you learn. Because if you go to someone, you go to a CPA that says they set up foundations, and you let them do all of it, and you don't learn anything, you'll never be able to max out the opportunity of having that foundation. So we have to learn about how these things work so that we're not at the mercy of getting information from these people and having to pay them every time you need some help. So get the information. And whenever anybody tells you anything, say, well, where is that? Like you hear with me, I go to IRS.gov. Like I get it in writing. Don't take people's opinion. Don't say, yes, they say we can do it. Like, you go and make sure you do as much as you can yourself. So even if you have to pay someone, you're walking into the situation intellectually.
All right. 800-450-7876. Tell us some of the things that your company does, because you said you're not a tax preparer, but you're a financial advisor. So what do you do then?
I think the most powerful thing that I do, is help people maximize their benefits at work. There are very few financial advisors who will talk to you unless you're buying something from them. But to me, AfroEconomics has to be about people doing what is best for them. And there's too often I've met people and they've met financial advisors and they've said, oh, yeah, well, you're doing that thing at work, but do you realize that you're going to have paid taxes on that down the road, and you shouldn't do that at work? You should do that over here with me. So you're giving up a match at work. You're just walking away from where they're giving you money to save, and you're putting it into something so that you can make sure that someone else gets paid. That's nice, but the point is, you've got to make sure that you're maximizing all of the opportunities available to you. I spend a lot of my time, Carl, on helping people just with their TSPs. I meet people sometimes, way too often, at the end of their career, and the only thing they've done with their TSP is save, the minimum amount, and they've always put it in just the G fund or just the F fund. So I have to explain to them what the different options mean, what the different options, what their historical performance is, how to make that work for you, why these benefits are good, the difference between doing it in the traditional 401k or doing it a traditional TSP or doing it into the Roth TSP, and the difference between the two. So I know that the most powerful thing that AfroEconomics can do for our planet is to help us maximize what we have available to us and get full benefit of the benefits available to us at work.
All right, 800-450-7876. Speak to J.B. Bryant. J.B., when we come back, tell us what do you do with the trust factor? Because, in any kind of black business,
Okay.
a lot of our folks, there's a trust issue when it comes to business, and it's even more, acute when it comes to cash money.
That's
money.
Right.
Business, right. Buying a product is sort of different, but, when you're having somebody control your money, there's a real serious trust issue. So how do you get over that?
Yeah. And I believe that we trust too easily the wrong thing. Like, we are so easily influenced by something that looks good. If they have a Bentley and a Rolex and they're popular and, they get in front, like I see it on social media all the time, and they get in front of this great big building and they go, hey, I'm going to be putting up some money and I'm buying this building. Do you want to get involved in it? And our people will do that. And the person has no historical performance of different properties and how it's worked out. They don't tell them how they'll ever get their money back, how they'll get their money. And I'm amazed at the things that people will do. So I think it's cool if you don't trust people. I feel more comfortable with us not trusting people. And in the only way I believe that you should put your money with someone is if they're regulated to a degree that you could sue them if you needed to get your money back. But I would argue that a large percentage of our money is invested, or we follow or take advice from people who are not regulated. Every word that I'm saying is being recorded, is regulated. I can't say anything that is going to mislead the public, or I can be fined. I could lose my licenses. I could, penalize. But the majority of our community is taking advice from people who don't have any responsibility to anybody. And they do it so willingly. And I feel like I have that we don't give credit enough to the people who are doing what they have to do so that you are protected. So I think that we have to wise up and stop just trusting people, but actually vetting people, seeking them out. What licenses do you have? How are they regulated? Looking up their name, Googling their name, going to their office, checking out where they're located. Where are you? When are your office hours? When are you there? But we will just do things and spend thousands of dollars with these people. And things they wouldn't have. I had a client one time, somebody called her on the phone, told her she had won the lottery. She needed to send in money and she had to pay these taxes. She sent in $20,000. I said to her, would you ever do that with me? Would you ever just send me $20,000 just because I said so? She said, that's a good point. I said, well, why'd you do that with them? Why did you do that with them? I had to and I didn't really want to get that upset, but I was so upset. Because I had promised another family member that I would look out for her, and I just didn't understand. I was so hurt. And mostly it's so offensive to me because they'll do things for other people that they would never consider doing with me. And I have to sit there and get audited, regulated, fill out documents, pay for licenses, update, E&O, and all of this stuff that we have to invest in to do legitimate business. So, and then also, I feel that people who are in a position that get the opportunity to be on a show like this, and I see it all the time, they'll do things like this, get an in with our people, and then not do right. So I'm living right now. I'm talking somebody's being influenced because of you. I'm getting the benefit of your work, what you did. So then I go and I jack it up and I'm telling that guy where I got this office and I don't. And it happens too much. But if we don't have a sense of responsibility to our community, to the people who believed in you, to the people that gave you an opportunity. So as far as trust, I think that we trust, but we trust the wrong people. So if you've got to, I say if we have to trust, then don't trust anybody. Vet everybody. But don't decide just because it's easy and they look good that you're going to do that. You know, they don't have to be vetted, but J.B. Bryant has a nappy head, so you're not going to trust her. That is ridiculous what we do. So I think that.
And let me jump in here, because you're absolutely right. But how do we close that wealth gap, though? Because I read somewhere that this is the biggest wealth gap, or the largest wealth gap since the Roaring '20s, and when everything was going good.
And it's growing.
At the bottom end of the barrel. And how can we close that wealth gap?
We have to invest and stop spending. We have to invest and stop spending. We are buying things rapidly. Now, I was just looking at the unemployment numbers when you called me, and the numbers came out that very day. And I was showing the difference between white unemployment is just a fraction over 3%. Black unemployment is almost at a double that, so that the over 6%. So black unemployment is higher than any other, but it's still at historic lows. So what we have to
hang on a second. Is it higher than Hispanic?
Oh, yeah. And this is just Google. Employment numbers just came out last week, blah, blah, blah. It will show you Asian unemployment is lower than white unemployment. It's like 3.1. White unemployment is 3.7. Black unemployment is like 6.7. Hispanic was like 4 point something. We have to realize that we have to maximize our opportunities. We have to start our own businesses because, unfortunately, we're going to. I don't see this trend stopping. I think we need to start our own businesses so we can employ our own people. We don't take a sense. That's why they have the unemployment, the low unemployment. Asians hire Asians. If we don't have our own business, then we are going to be unemployed. White people hire white people. White people have to hire everybody. And then you see that the Hispanics hire Hispanics. They all work together. And then some black people even have a habit of even joking on that, which is ridiculous. So we have to make sure that we change our mentality about our sense of responsibility to our empowerment. Nothing is going to change.
But let me jump in here again. Then why do we have some supervisors or people who have the authority to hire and fire people? They hire everybody else except people who look like them.
Sad because we unfortunately don't want to work for our own. And that's sad. They don't trust their own. I remember when I was hiring a nanny for my daughter, and I found this lady. She was an experienced nanny. And I said, I'm going to pay you more than this white family. I'm going to give you benefits. She didn't have any benefits. She wasn't really getting paid, nothing. And she was in the classified ad looking for somebody. I ran an ad. I find this sister. She did not want to help me with my baby. That's sad. And I was offering her twice as much as they were offering. Disability benefit, health benefit, full, she was going to be a real person. She was just getting a 1099. These people weren't making any investment in her. She was like, soon they said they're going to get me some health insurance. This was way before Obamacare. And I said, well, you've been there. Like, the kids are getting older now. Like, this. She said, yeah, but she was looking at me. And she said, that girl can't pay me. I could see it. I could feel it. She just couldn't see that I could pay her. Isn't that sad? And that if we don't start believing in us, then this will not change. I understand how much we get discriminated by others, but the only thing that matters to me is how you treat me. You treat me, how you treat me. You got to believe in me.
Well, let me jump in here. Let's get back to the money a bit, JB. Suppose I get a tax refund. People back in there, people tell me they were getting 5 and 10 grand back from Uncle Sam. You know, if you get even say $5,000, what's the best way to? What should you do with that money? You get a tax refund and say all your bills are paid. You don't need it for any special, any special emergency, and it's just like found money. So what do you do with it?
You want to get rid of the wealth gap, you got to get rid of the debt. See, wealth is assets minus liabilities. So when they did that road to zero wealth, and they're saying that we're going to have zero wealth, it's because we are dominated by consumer items. Home ownership was about the same. But when the home values went down dramatically, it hurt our wealth dramatically because we weren't positioned anywhere to recover from that. Where if you're more diversified and you're still doing some stocks and you're doing your real estate, then you can recover from those types of things. Plus, our communities struggled more. So when you get this extra money, you have to put it into things like that will appreciate. So if you get the $5,000 and you listen to the ad and you buy another car, instead of getting on the bus, and you buy another car and you still have the credit card debt, you will not get wealthy. We're going to have to go through a time that you have less. Because I've been there. I've been through that time of having all these luxury cars, everybody looking at you and getting that acceptance and appreciation. But I said I refuse to be broke. I refuse to be broke. I refuse to look rich and not be rich. I would rather look good on my balance sheet. And the poorer I look, Carl, the wealthier I am. We have to realize that our wealth is not going to be able to be shown, not that true money. All of us, you look at the richest man, like Robert Smith, the richest man, when I look at him, the richest black man in America, and I look at him, he sits there and he talks, what's he doing? Wearing a suit, just like everybody else. Why does it matter if it's $10,000 or $1,000? He's wearing the same thing.
So how much? I'll let you finish that train of thought. J.B. Bryan, I'm going to let you finish your thought.
Yes, indeed. I have so many thoughts. But my final thoughts my thoughts that continuously go through my mind is that we have to become less materialistic. That's going to help us close that wealth gap. We don't have to impress anybody. All you need to do is think about the footprint you want to leave on this planet, the next generation. And the only way for our community, our people to have wealth is that my life has to be spent on developing wealth, not just for me, but for that next generation and that next generation and that next generation. We got to move our mind from daily living to decade living and then generational living. And it's possible. But every penny counts. Every habit counts. Our kids learn more from what we do than what we say. And we're always, the big talk has got to close down. The real simple day-to-day transactions, like with the Keith that called in and he was talking about him and his wife hustling, keeping that family together, making that money. That's the example we want to set. That's generational wealth. That's us. That's how we're going to build it. That's how the gap's going to change from our daily habits.
Totally agreed. And people are calling at the last minute, as they usually do. So for the folks who didn't get a chance to ask you questions on the air, how can they reach you, JB?
Call me at 1-844-522-7926. Got free workshops. I'm doing a series for women in May, a series lunchtime and for men in June. And then I do my Wednesday nights. I do my Sunday mornings. Got so much free stuff, not to mention the free membership that you have. You don't have to spend money on everything. And we don't have to be afraid of something that's complimentary, which is even scarier to me. Take advantage of the free membership at AfroEconomics.org. Or look at the other membership privileges, but you're absolutely free. You can participate in all my members-only meetings, all of the events, all of the stuff, get discounts, membership, all of that. So just take advantage of it. Carl, I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate the opportunity to just touch someone's life. And that's how we're going to close the wealth gap. Yeah,
that is a major issue, and we've got to work on it. But I thank you for all the work that you do, too, because hopefully some people will take advantage. Because, a lot of people out there working, and they just like working check to check, and that can be avoidable. Mm-hmm. You can help them save some money as well.
That's right. And what you do, you working check to check, that's cool. all of us, look, all of us are. That's what we need to realize, that all of us are. All of us. That's why we have to protect our health, protect your wealth, protect your family, reduce the stress, avoid the debt. And it's easy. So as we're going through this, because if we celebrate through our life, the next generation will suffer again. So we got to pay the price and keep it pleasant and keep it at peace by avoiding all of the unnecessary stress that materialism can bring to us. It has brought to us. We can do it. We deserve it all. Yes, we do. Because, people go, oh, I deserve it. Yes, Carl, we deserve it. But I deserve more than what this world really can offer me. We all do. So don't just buy based on what you deserve. Buy based on what's going to bring you peace and help you build wealth. Do that.
Yeah, we've got to figure out a way how to move our people from the bottom of the barrel. I know Dr.
Right.
Claude Anderson talks about it quite a bit.
That's right.
The wealth bit, and Jim Klingman, Professor Klingman talks about it as well. He's written about it, Blackonomics. And I'm glad that you are physically teaching folks how to do it, because that's the only way it's going to happen. The other people seem to, it seems like it's organic with them. It's just instinct.
Yes.
But for us, they shop with each other. They do business with each other. But for us, it seems like it's such a huge problem, and so we've got to figure out how to get around that.
And we just can't give up.
Thank you again.
We can't give up.
No, we can't.
Never give up.
No, we can't. That's the main thing.
That's right. Thank you.
So I thank you for what you do each and every day, because this is your slice of the pie. So keep on producing that pie, and we're going to make it.
And thank you for saying Jim's name. I love you, Jim, and I love you. Everything you did. I want to follow. I want to follow in your footsteps. I got you. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Yeah, shout out. One of the things we talked about with Jim, and I mention it all the time on the air, these well-heeled blacks that we have, whether they be entertainers or athletes, whether their children and children's children will still have that money. Will they? With Shaq's grandchildren, great-grandchildren,
that's
still
right.
have the money. Will they turn it over like the Kennedys and the Carnegies?
That's so true.
And the Rockefellers. Will that money stay in the black community?
That's
Those
so
are things that we said,
wherever
we go in the afterlife, that's one of the things we're going to be looking out for.
So
if that happens to our
and it's
community.
very unlikely that there's a second generation wealthy person, which is amazing. If you look at the statistics, that the people like Donald Trump are actually a rarity. Generally, people lose wealth as the generations go on. It goes declining. Our community cannot afford to follow that habit. We have to continue to build on our wealth, and that is by the example that we set and setting up things appropriately. Because a lot of us die without wills. Superstars. I don't think Aretha Franklin had a will. That's a problem. And it makes it very expensive, and that cuts into your estate big time. We got to stop it.
Well, we got to run.
Okay. Thank you.
Sadiqi's on deck. Thank you, JB.
Thank you
for sharing all that information with us.
Thank you. Today's podcast was powered by J.B. Bryan Financial Group, a registered investment advisory firm and the home of AfroEconomics in Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C., and New York. Don't forget to subscribe to AfroEconomics with J.B. Bryan on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and any other podcast directory. If you like what you hear, leave me a 5-star review. I'm J.B. Bryan, and that's AfroEconomics at AURN.com.